Last week we reviewed Quiet Place Day 1, Fly Me to the Moon, and breakout horror movie Longlegs, which has done fantastically well. Yeah. It's broken records actually for a horror debut in terms of its budget and its opening. But we have another horror movie this week.
Great to see that about Longlegs. Yeah. And also, not only has it had good reviews, good word of mouth, but the imagery in the poster very striking, bright saturated red with the eyes and that sort of like parchmenty, patchy thing. Just very compelling, very striking.
I saw a very good clip where they were talking about when Micah Monroe first saw Nicolas Cage's character, and they isolated her heartbeat because she'd never seen him before. But when they showed the clip, they put a big black box over Nicolas Cage's face. So not to spoil it, so you will only see his face when you go to the cinema.
Fantastic. Go and check out the Longlegs review from last week. We really enjoyed it. Similarly, in the realm of horror, I was speaking to my friend Horror Amy, who works in horror, and I was talking to her about Longlegs, and she was like, "Oh, you should check out In a Violent Nature, small independent film that's just come out from Shudder. It's the first-time feature from director writer Chris Nash, who's made a couple of shorts that she sent to me, but I haven't seen yet. But either way, she was like, In a Violent Nature is really interesting. You should check it out. This film is a horror film in every single way, apart from the fact that it really isn't scary. And what's funny is that hasn't taken away from this film. This film is the classic slasher in the woods, chasing after a group of young adults. But for this film, we see the entire film from the perspective of the monster, of the slasher, of the killer. That is the entire premise of this film. So interestingly, we are treated to this wonderful inversion of the horror trope. And I think it really works. It's 90 minutes. Our film starts with our monster awakening from having been buried in the ground after a group of young adults take a relic from his past that is very dear to him. After they take it, he realizes it's missing immediately and seeks to hunt down and kill the teenagers who took it in pursuit of this relic. That's all you need to know. Because this film is from the perspective of the monster, the story is explained to us through overhearing of these teenagers. So we get the origin story of the monster as these teenagers or these young adults are sitting behind a campfire telling each other scary stories of what happened in this woods. And weirdly, the exposition of like the monster listening through the window of the cabin or watching people talk, it didn't feel as forced and as clunky as I thought that would. It weirdly is just enough exposition that just totally worked and was enough. It's beautifully shot, 4:3 aspect ratio. The camera sits for a lot of the time over the shoulder of our monster, kind of like in a third-person video game would, where the camera's sort of a little bit raised and a lot of the shot is sort of behind his head and shoulders watching him march through. The spectacle of this film is the gore. So while this film isn't scary and it didn't matter, the gore is the spectacle, and it's really playful with its kills. There was one kill in particular which I did like just gasp my mouth and go, oh my God, in my seat. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But what I took away from this film was it's really interesting. It's not scary, but it's uncomfortable, and there's moments of sort of that uncomfortable feeling when you're watching a horror film. But I think it would sit really well on a film studies curriculum of having a horror film there that dissects and unpacks the horror genre. I feel like it satirizes horror without actually taking anything away from horror itself. So you're seeing the other version of it. And there's a really sadistic part of me that sees these, like I see a kid leave the cabin to go to the toilet in the middle of the woods, and I'm like, this will be great. He's obviously going to die. Or I see two girls going to swim in a lake, and you see our monster descend into the lake. I'm like, great. I know the story here, and that's the fun. And I think it's really good. I also think we've had emails before from people who run their own film clubs, and they're often asking about films. I think this would be a really great shout to take to your film club, because chances are people haven't seen it yet. It's a really interesting film that you're going to want to talk about for an hour after you've seen it. So I'd really recommend it. If you want to watch horror films and you don't like being scared, please go and check out In a Violent Nature. It is not scary, and it's not bad because it's not scary. It's actually interesting in the way in which it feels like it really understands horror, but doesn't want to disrespect horror. Very unique, not really ever seen anything like it.
So it's just dark and a bit, and it looks quite like squishy.
Oh yeah, the gore is really there. Like, you know that opening scene of John Carpenter's Halloween, which that's in first person where he commits the murder. It's like they've taken that concept and stretched it out for an entire film, and it's this wonderful creative inversion of the genre. It looks like it was made for no money.
Yeah. And how long was it?
Just over 90 minutes.
Lovely.
It is. I will say it's slow and it feels long because a lot of the our monster walks very slowly, like all great monsters do, and there's a lot of times where you really are on a static wide watching this person, or you're just behind them following them very slowly. So I'd say, given that it's 94 minutes long, it's a long 94, but didn't overstay its welcome. Done. You could easily watch this and I think really get you going over what it is actually about a horror scenario that makes you scared. And though the film didn't scare me, I really don't want to go to a cabin in the woods at all. Like this film will run through my mind when I'm next in a cabin in the woods, whenever that may be. And like that evening, I went for a run at night. And I was walking through the park near me that has a really woodsy bit. Yeah. And I got there and it's really dark. And I was like, what the hell am I doing? This is awful. I just saw a film this morning that was really not uncomfortable about all of that. Brilliant. And if you're a fan of gore, like my friend Amy is, you are not going to be left wanting. Interesting.
Yeah.
I guarantee you've not seen a horror film like it. I do recommend it. Check it out.
Well, that was In a Violent Nature. If you guys have seen it, let us know. Send in your thoughts to hello@popkitchenpodcast.com. I have seen a lot of good buzz around it, like people naming it some of the best horror films, one of the best horror films of the year. But I think at the moment, Longlegs has kind of taken the hype, the news cycle. It's kind of the dominant film, but hopefully people get to see this as well.
And it's quite smart for it to have gone for one of the most familiar horror tropes, which is a group of young teenagers in a cabin in the woods and they get picked off one by one. Like that is part of its smart, is to enhance that, but not try to, I don't know, it takes nothing away from it by showing you the monster. It's interesting.
Fantastic.